Well, you see the big fella there on the screen, and after last night's game and his absence, even with them fighting and clawing at the end to get themselves back into it, ultimately losing their ninth straight, Joel Embiid is still in front of the mind of everyone when it comes to this particular team, the remainder of the season, and quite frankly, his career going forward for the Philadelphia 76ers. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast on a Thursday, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Givens. Bree is here. All of you in the chat, as always, on this Thursday, the day after another loss for the Philadelphia 76ers. But again, front of mind is, in fact, Joel Embiid. And partly because of some things we're going to get into today with Kyle and Derek, both of their articles this week at allphly.com. So I'll tell you right out of the chute, if you haven't done already and you want to read these articles,
all of you.
You're slackers, as Kyle just called you. I second that. But also, just the great content that you're going to get there. And while we are going to talk a lot about the things within their stories that they have written at allphly.com, look, you need to go read it because it's really good for both of them, and take advantage of the deal right now. First year as a member of the Die Hard community at allphly.com, $48, $4 a month. That's nothing. $4 a month. That's nothing. And you can handle that, I think. And if you can, go sign up, become a Die Hard member, get a T-shirt, be a part of the Discord as well, and just
Tell
enjoy.
Tell them about that wonderful Discord, Devon.
The Discord that I pop up in, I think last time I was in there was right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And
it's also, you have been in the Discord more recently than the Sixers won a game.
There you go. The streak continues, man.
Clap it up for Devon.
Absolutely. So go do that, allphly.com. So to start it off,
in all seriousness, though, like Kyle and I spend a lot of time in that Discord. There's a lot of good conversation.
You'll see Bree in there
Devon's
too.
just too cool for that. He's too cool for that.
See Bree in there too. She's in there. A lot of you are in there.
Devon's just at home watching Martin and ignoring all of us.
Keeping my peace, man. Keeping my peace. We have to talk about the games and watch the games. There you have it. All right, but we're also going to talk about a little bit later an update on Eric Gordon, if you haven't heard, and share some stuff from our good friend Jake Fisher as well about Joel Embiid as we start things off, though, with the conversation of Joel. And Derek, just to start off with yours, since yours dropped a little bit earlier today, we've been focused on everything, obviously starting with the injury period. But when he's out there on the floor in the 19 games that he's played, while he's had some really good ones, dropping a triple-double after missing a month, some really other good performances where he's getting over 30, he's collecting some rebounds, he's doing some things defensively. In the end, though, we've seen more bad than good with Joel in the 19 games, from the frustration level, wearing it on his face, yelling at Kelly Oubre on the sideline out of frustration. And we've seen all that stuff kind of boil over and to the floor, where that is part of it. But it is also, if he's out there and we say you're out there, play. That's one of our things here on the show. You're out there, give your best effort. No, one of the things that we can always rely on with him, outside of knocking down that 15 to 17-foot jumper, is his defense to hold up pretty well and kind of anchor things for the 76ers. But based on the research that you've done and the story that you put together at allphly.com, even those numbers have been down for him.
Oh, they're down in a big way. Like, for example, that mid-range jumper you were talking about, down to 39% on long mid-range jumpers from 49% last year. Or not 49% last year, 49% over the 4 years where he was playing at an MVP caliber level. So the 2 years where
I'm making faces, by the way, it's the weird creaking on the other side of the room, everybody. Sorry. It's not Derek's fault.
Those are my shoes. I apologize. So over the 2 years where he was runner-up, the 1 year where he won it, and the half year where he was playing at an MVP level before getting injured, he was shooting about 10% higher on mid-range jumpers. And he was shooting a lot more at the rim, a lot more inside. A lot of that, I think, comes down to the fact that, well, first of all, they're not defending him as hard out in the perimeter, so his driving lanes have closed up a bit. But really more, it's that he doesn't trust the knee enough to really make those explosive drives. Yeah. Which is part of what made him so unique and so tough. But what I will say is, I think after looking at it and going back and rewatching all the film and looking at the numbers recently, and especially since returning in January, I think earlier in the season he still had moments defensively, but over the last couple of weeks since returning, his defense has been nowhere near where it previously was. He looks flat-footed a lot on the perimeter when he's playing in a drop. He's in a very, very deep drop. When he's trying to contest at the rim, he's either not elevating, or when he does elevate, he's just not getting off the ground very quickly. And just all of a sudden, for really the first time in his career, because even the Joel skeptics, the people who do not believe in him, do not trust him in the playoffs, most of that comes down to his offense. His defense has pretty much been undeniable from the moment he stepped on the floor. He would take really, really bad teams, really bad defensive teams, bad defensive personnel, and transform them every time he was on the floor.
He played with Sergio Rodriguez, who was one of the worst defenders in the league, and would make that a
whether it's
viable
Sergio or Dario or Seth or all kinds of players who were just not able to compete defensively. He would transform them not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs. That's a big reason why when you looked at the plus minus, he always had an elite plus minus, even when he was shooting 42% from the field and averaging 5 turnovers in the playoffs, because he was transformative defensively. And over the last 3 weeks is the first time we went, not only is he not fixing the problems, but he's been a problem. And I've never seen that before.
You gave me a quick flashback to the Seth Curry thing. That's some bad defense.
Kevin Huerter's
there,
still
man.
posting him
He's
up.
still posting him up, lighting him up. But no, man, I mean, Kyle, before you get started, it's just that we watch the games, we see it. You read Derek's story at allphly.com. You go back and look at the highlights. And we brought it up the night that they played the Nets when you joined us. Me and Rich talked about it with Bree, and then you came on. Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe, having some success there. Then going back and looking at the highlights that Derek has in the story, it's not just Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum or Drew Holiday finishing at the rim. It's Keon Johnson and Zaire Williams getting straight line drive layups where all they have to do is just get the defender a little bit off balance, make Joel think a little bit. But his reaction time was always really good of trusting himself and getting
He's
there
a really smart player.
and cleaning that stuff up. And that stuff has just been so obvious that it's no longer there.
Yeah.
At least for this year.
I think one of the things that Derek highlighted in his story that was one of the main things I wanted to get at today was, yes, there is physical decline, right? Like we can see he just is not moving as well. I think the lack of driving success is at least in some part due to that. To me, the standout thing watching him defensively is the hesitation and the uncertainty, and Joel not playing like a guy who like truly believes in, I know what to do. I know where to be. I'm going to react like this, and this. And I think one of the things that Derek pointed out in his story is that there are times even when he's in position and he's not going up to contest shots. And it's not that, as big men get older, right, they are more selective with, you're not going to jump up and challenge every shot. Like nobody's a Dembona that's in their 30s generally, right? Just leaping at everything. And
in part because you realize that leaping at everything isn't necessarily good for defense.
It's not necessarily good for defense, and many other reasons not to do it. But Joel just isn't jumping just in general, right? He's not doing it much on offense. We've seen very few dunks from him. When he's scoring layups around the rim, it's a lot of like tippy toe or like barely clearing a phone book level of jump and like doing only the bare minimum that he has to. And while I can understand that, like if you're trying to get in his mind and say, I need to do everything to try to limit the damage, limit the pressure, limit the pain, when you're constantly thinking about that, you just can't be as effective of a basketball player as you need to be, or certainly that you want to be as Joel Embiid, right? Like you can't be out there hesitating. One of the honestly most encouraging plays was one that scared the hell out of people. It's him just like diving into the corner for a shot block attempt where you see that moment where it's like, oh, he's not thinking of it at that time. But like so much of his game right now otherwise has been, I can see the gears turning in his head. And Derek said it perfectly in his story. There has never been a worse time to be a slow or immobile big in the NBA, right? Teams spread you out. They play 5 out. At minimum, they play 4 out and then a rim runner. And so even then, that presents problems for Joel Embiid. If he's got to go up and play with above the rim players, rim runners like Nick Claxton, right? That's a guy that Joel used to just toss around like a rag doll. He's in foul trouble for most of, like, I think he averages something like 28 points a game and 13 rebounds and whatever against Claxton and kills that guy. And Claxton is just dragging him up and down the floor because he's outrunning him. And he looks like a guy who's sure of himself, whereas Joel is not. And that to me is the craziest part about all of this, right? Like if you would have told me before the year, hey, Joel's going to deal with physical problems, I understand that, right? But I think the skill level is so high that he could still adjust and still be at least like the outline of the guy that we've become familiar with over the years. I think the lack of confidence that he is playing with, it was the most shocking thing that we've seen this year. And that is why, as we eventually get into all these surgery potentials or treatment options and all the various reporting that's out there on this stuff, I just like what he needs first and foremost is to get his mind right. And it's one of the reasons I think, even if there is not necessarily a fix all, this is a Band-Aid that we put on it and it's all better, right? It just fixes everything. Even if that option doesn't exist, I think he needs to take a step away mentally, because I think it's making it worse having him play in the state that he's in, and it's compounding the problems that he has by throwing him out there and having him just like waltz up and down the floor, head hunched over, shoulder slumped. Like that's not a way to get him back to who he used to be.
He was always a good thinking man in the game, where he saw things. So as you guys said, you can see the wheels turning. He knows what he sees. He knows what he normally reacts to. The knee is not letting him react to it. And then he's thinking about it, not letting him react to it. You bring up the point against the Nets where he tried to close out in the corner and contest that shot, which he did. And he left his feet to contest the shot. He wasn't thinking about it until it was time to land, and he decided to fall on the floor, so he didn't put pressure on that knee. And then eventually, the next time out, when he's on the sideline, I guess KJ or somebody had to put him some contraption around his ankle, because he then seemed like he aggravated his ankle somehow. So all of that stuff is happening. So from the rim running of Nick Claxton, getting up and down the floor, just flat out defeating him up and down the floor. Nick Claxton was always faster, but Embiid could at least keep up and contest it once they got there. And the fear for that player was there that he might pin this against the backboard or send it into the seats. And that's the other thing that you see. When we talk about Joel Embiid being the thinking man of the game, it's also the opposition now. They don't even have to think as much anymore, because they know they can take advantage of him in these situations where in the past they thought of it so much that he would change and alter those shots at the rim. They would even think about certain things they would do on the perimeter, because he would show where he would get down and get into that defensive position against a guard or a wing and hold up just enough where he either stayed with him or allowed his teammate to get back on his man, where he can then drop back a little bit and recover, protecting in the middle of the paint, or even finding his man, especially for a guy like Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe that's out there, not necessarily just the Kristaps Porzingis who's going to shoot from the perimeter, but with him being so bad this year with the defensive side of things and his knee being what it is, when you see the opposition attacking Joel Embiid, they know out there on the floor that they have him, that he is somewhat defeated, where he cannot be that player that we always talked about as being a defensive player of the year candidate, and one that is simply the best, where if he's having a bad offensive game, hey, go out there and just get a few of those block shots, alter those things, get those rebounds, and still win the game by one. So when that is gone for him, for right now, that's a big problem. So I agree with Kyle, and yes, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but he has to step away from the game right now. This has been going on from when the injury occurred against Golden State, the whole Denver thing, where he found himself back on the floor when he shouldn't have because of all the stuff that was out there, not playing in Denver. Then he goes and gets hurt against the Golden State Warriors, comes back against the New York Knicks, or the few weeks before, and played those 8 games before the start of the postseason, re-injures the knee again. So this has been a constant thing. Once they get eliminated, now he's gearing up for the Olympics and getting himself right for that. How am I going to play through this? And while the celebration and the jubilation and all from winning a gold medal, the reality at some point had to come back to, how am I going to play for the Philadelphia 76ers and help them? So this has been a constant struggle that's been going on, whether it's his fault or not. It's been there, and we're seeing the end result of it, where not only the issue of trusting the knee, but trusting his mind of what's going on and simply accepting the fact of who he is in this moment today to help out this basketball team. And he hasn't. He's helped them out a little bit. But when you look at the record of the 19 games that he's played, the few with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George, while it started off really well, it eventually started to decline and decline quickly. And when we see him out there and he's moping and I can't forget to continue to get back to that Kelly Oubre thing where it's like, yeah, dude, you always anchor and you point things out and let everybody know, but you can't question effort from others when your effort is not there, whether it's the thinking part of it that you have to accept yourself, the demon that you're fighting of what you can't do any longer, that comes back to me because when you bring up his body language in the story, Derek, and we've seen that for years, this has been like an all-time low of body language.
See, but here's what I'll say about the body language, because that's been a common complaint. And I think a lot of times that's when he's frustrated at somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
He's frustrated at a teammate, maybe a coach, certainly the refs. Especially in that Boston game, his body language looked like he was frustrated with himself. Like he knew, I know what I'm supposed to do. I can't physically do it. And it's annoying the ever-living heck out of him. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And it is something where, like, you know, we talk a lot about coaches and how they prefer strong and wrong over indecision. Now, Sixers have some wings where I might question that overall philosophy. But overall, as a general concept, I think that's true. And you're seeing that with Joel, because he's certainly very flat-footed right now. He's certainly, like, he doesn't have his head on a swivel the way he used to. And when he does, he doesn't really commit to anything, because I think he doesn't know if he can get there the way that he used to. And because of that, even if it's just a half second or a half step, it's killing him right now defensively. And that's something where that might get better in time as he learns what he can do physically, transition into more of like a Brook Lopez type defensive role. He could get better at judging that. But I don't want to say it's all mental, because you look at him and when he elevates or when he tries to move, he is just simply not covering as much ground as he usually did. And it's pretty stark and it's pretty drastic. And a big question is, yes, he can get better at reading himself and becoming more decisive and understanding what he has to do. But how much of that, I don't even want to say like burst, but how much of that ability to change direction can he get back? Can he get back 50% of where he previously was? Can he get back 20%? If he does that, how does that then impact his, his confidence and his decisiveness? Because right now it's just a combination of all of it. And I don't know the answers to any of it.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is like all of that is interconnected, right? Like let's say we could envision in Joel's brain, it's like it's 70% physical and 30% mental. Well, the problem is it's all, as the game is going on, it doesn't really matter if it's one or the other. What matters is you're hesitating or you're not acting because, oh, all right, at this moment, I feel pain. And then so on the next play, when maybe a couple years ago, I would have said, I'm going to gun it and just go 100 miles an hour and try to make this play. There's the part in the back of your brain that's like, I can feel this pain and I know what's happened before. I've suffered all these injuries. I've had these multiple surgeries. And now I just like, it's that it doesn't have to be, as Derek said, it's a half second. It's a split second. Those are the margins when you play against athletes who, a lot of them are much healthier, are in many cases are younger and are more athletic than he is at this point. And so when you lose the processing speed, when your mind gets clouded in that way, it just like, it matters in the sense of if you have a physical problem, you can identify it and try to fix it and mitigate those problems. That's important to know. But as long as the feedback loop keeps going, and he can't pull out of this funk, then they're interchangeable, right? Like I could sit here and say, oh, I think it's 100% mental, or oh, I think it's 100% physical. What matters for the Sixers is, for him, it's been a constant recently. And what we see out of him is the frustration that Derek's talking about with himself and not trusting himself and his body. And like that is such a tough thing to try to even fathom, like the feel that your body is just betraying you. Like you've tried all these things, you've had these surgeries, you've changed your game multiple times, right? Like he's been a post player, he's been the elbow guy, he shot threes to accommodate other guys, and now he's really, because of his body, stepping out and he's taking way more threes. He's probably taking too many mid-range jumpers instead of getting to the paint because he can't And it's like, it just builds and it builds and it builds. And on top of that, this season as a team has been a failure, right? Like the guy that you went out and recruited, who you were excited to get on the team, hasn't been as good as he needs to be, right? And like you look at people, Joel has talked a lot about the individual awards, maybe more than other guys, right? And so he's gotten painted a certain way because of that. But like deep down, Joel wants to win. And Joel understands that like nothing he does really matters until or unless he wins. And so he feels his body betraying him. And then he sees the season falling apart and he says, well, this is my fault, right? Like in your mind, as a prideful person, as someone who's a competitor, like I have a big part to play in this. And so then the feedback loop keeps going, right? Like you just get, I don't want to use the word depressed because he doesn't want to be labeled that way, but you feel depressed. You feel sad. You feel frustrated. You're like, I want to help and I think I can, but either my body's not letting me or my brain isn't. And it's all just it's a really sad thing to watch.
All right, we'll come back and we'll keep it going on the Embiid conversation. Also, just again, if people have missed it, just our thoughts on how they should handle the final 24 games of the season in regards to him. We'll do that when we get back, talk about Kyle's story at allphly.com, because when we speak about the mental part and things along the lines and getting some stuff from where the organization is headed, some of the information about what is available to him, what may or may not fix the issue in his knee. We'll talk about Kyle's story as well when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast presented by Bet365.
First up, we have to tell you about our friends over at Glatt Hair Restoration. Because anyone can buy equipment and say that they do hair restoration. Only Glatt Hair Restoration by Morgenstern Medical offers decades of proven results using innovative approach and delivered by leaders in the industry. Glatt Hair can help during all stages of hair loss with leading-edge treatments for prevention and restoration, including laser light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation, topical and oral medications, PRP and stem cell restoration, and hair restoration surgery. Each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment. Caring patient advocates then work with you from the first phone call to the last follow-up visit. They understand that this decision can be emotional and challenging, and they're here to help make your experience simple and stress-free. Glatt Hair isn't just about restoration. It's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really do dramatically change lives. Change your hair, change your life. Bald is now optional. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started.
Also want to let you know about Bet365. Tonight, there are 5 basketball games to be played in the association. And if you want to make a little bit of a wager on one and get an early payout if things work out for you, Bet365 is the place for you. With 90 million users worldwide, live streams of over 780,000 events each year, and those early payout offers across the NBA and the NHL as well. They have pioneered live in-game betting at Bet365, and with the early payout offer in both the NHL and the NBA, let me tell you about the NHL first. What you can do is if you're a winner, your team gains a 3-goal lead with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections. That marks you as a winner. On the basketball side, if you are a team, if you place a wager on a team to go up by 20 points with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections, that also marks you as a winner. And new customers now can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit 10, place a bet for $5, and you get $150 in bonus bets. Once again, that's win or lose. So you can't beat that. You can't beat that at all. And with that, you make sure you go sign up right now using the code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Podcast. Sixers on a 9-game losing skid, folks. They are 20-38 after their loss by 5 to the New York Knicks at the Garden. Tough loss for them. It's been a lot of those. Of course, 9 in a row. Not easy as well. And just a quick note on our schedule. We're off on Friday. We're back on Saturday for the 8 o'clock game against the Golden State Warriors. That's in South Philly. And it should be an easy W, as Derek just said. We'll
Say
see.
for which team, but
Didn't say. We just said we'll see how it plays out on Saturday night. Pregame will start at 8:30 with Rich and myself and Bree. We'll be here, Derek and Kyle at the arena. So make sure 8 o'clock Saturday, special start time, nationally televised game for the Sixers and the Warriors.
it is because you were talking about how depressing it is. It was nice to get that like 50 point drubbing to the Bulls because it provided a distraction.
But they didn't lose by 50.
They did. They had a huge run.
Hang the banner.
hang the 24-6 banner.
It still felt like it, didn't it?
But it at least provided a distraction from the truly depressing topic, which is what we're talking about today. Because it has such a huge impact on the team, has such a huge impact on Joel. And there's almost like the sentiment out there that like, well, I'm not going to feel sympathy because he was imperfect in this way, or he didn't come up big in this regard. No, I don't think you have to do that. Like, this is a guy who has dedicated legitimately half his life to playing basketball. His body's betraying him. How he suffered the injury was mostly a freak accident where somebody else fell on him. Like, I think this is a shitty thing to talk about that we have to because it's such I apologize, a stinky thing to talk about that we have to because it's such a big deal with the team. But none of it is fun. None of it is something I want to be talking about. But here we are.
50.
I need another 50-point blowout to distract me from the reality of what we're living in.
You might get one on Saturday. You might. Kyle, just the reporting that you've done about the approach of how things should be going forward or could be going forward with it.
Well, I was going to say, should be is the contention here, right? Because what we have said all throughout the season, as Derek and I and Devon, we've all reported on this and talked to our people around the team, around the league and whatnot, is that there's not somebody out there yet. I'll emphasize yet because maybe he'll see some specialist that's like, hey, this looks like a straightforward path to fixing this. But there hasn't been a doctor who was like, this thing, this singular procedure, this surgery is the magic bullet. And in fact, the consensus based on talking to the let's call it a dozen doctors, although at this point I would guess that it's more than that, is that honestly the most realistic path forward is just he's going to have to adjust to this, right? Because most of the other options that are on the table are experimental in some way, or it's an end-or, I should say. They're not actually addressing the root cause. They're basically trying to get around what the problem is, which is that he has no meniscus. And because he has no meniscus, the bone hits the bone and, cartilage is taking damage and his knee swells up. He's dealing with pain. And so there's nothing that has been suggested to me that says, here's the procedure. Joel is better. He's back. And it's also, even the ones that exist, they're not ones that even if they worked would have him back in a short amount of time. Most of them are long time periods of recovery. What I had been told earlier this year, I don't know if this is still true, is that the Lonzo Ball, that meniscus replacement, that wasn't even a possibility.
Aren't a lot of 7'2" people to get meniscus from.
So not even a possibility for that to happen and for that to work for him. So some of the other things that have been floated, and Derek and I have talked about some of these with people around the league about how reasonable is this, or is there any evidence for this? I've read medical journals. One of the ones that pops up is, and I used this word the other day, it's an osteotomy, which in layman's terms, you're cutting / shaving bones, and you're essentially trying to realign someone's body. So in Joel's example, his knee is taking a lot of pressure and pain and whatnot. And what you would do is there are multiple versions of it. Some are at the hip, some are at the knee, or with using the tibia. You shave the bones and you realign them in a way that would take pressure off of the knee and off the spots that by having no meniscus, you're being impacted. So I will say this. It's a surgery with a fairly high success rate, but it's mostly used on middle-aged, like people in their 50s who are staring down a potential knee replacement as a quality of life thing, right? Like, hey, less pain day to day, and you probably push off a knee replacement by 15 to 20 years. If you're dealing with osteoarthritis in the knee, that's a real thing that will help you. this is not a surgery that has a lot of track record with people who are high-end athletes. And even the studies are like they're college athletes who are playing, 800 different sports. And so even within that, it's like there are probably only a few basketball players who have gotten it, and maybe they return to play like D2, D3 basketball, right? Like there is no case study for that type of procedure on a guy like Joel Embiid. Yeah. So then there are some other things. There's radiation treatment, which is a thing that used to be used as a pain tolerance or a pain swelling tolerance thing back in the 60s and 70s. That was replaced essentially by what Joel Embiid has been doing most of this year. People taking, I don't want to use the word steroids, but people taking like the PRP injections and things of that nature. So you could do some radiation treatment on the knee, and there's a lot more evidence that you could do something like that. But then, what are the side effects of that? Radiation therapy, even in low doses, tends to be that brings on fatigue, right? And so for a 7-footer who are always like, oh, does he have the lungs to run up and down the floor and do all that? You're going to subject this guy to radiation therapy multiple times a week?
I haven't done a whole lot of research into this, but I did read a lot of comic books as a kid and watched a lot of comic book movies as an adult. Are you sure there aren't some positive side effects from this?
Well, if you're asking if he could turn into like the comic book hero, The Process, and I don't know. I can't tell you that. But yeah, so these are the types of things we're talking about, right? The Lonzo thing, I think, is not on the table as far as I know. So then you're just getting into this stuff that's way more untested for guys who play sports at the level that Joel Embiid has to.
Now, Cheddar did bring up a creative solve here. Can't find many 7'2" guys. Can we find maybe 2 3'6" kids? And
I'll be honest, Hedva, I'm not a doctor. No? I just read what doctors say and listen to what they say.
After we're done here, let's run that up the flagpole, see if they can.
See if that works. Yeah. And that's tough because you just brought up him being a 7'2" guy, and that Lonzo Ball example always comes up. And Lonzo Ball 6'4", 6'5", way lighter than 280.
And again, he has not played more than 29 minutes in a game the entire season. He has been,
after missing 2 years?
Yes. Now, the recovery period from the surgery was roughly 18, 19 months. So it's not quite. So he had tried some other things and the knee wasn't responding. And that's why he did the meniscus replacement. But even then, he got it in March 2023. First game that he played was October 2024. So that is a long, long time. Granted, it's like if you get that and it's like a year, you're at the end of the year, you just wait the whole off season. So I don't know how long that, maybe it's a true recovery of like 15 months or something. But even then, you're wiping out all of next year. And that's,
if I thought that had a reasonable degree of getting him back to where he was, I'd sign up for it right now. But like you mentioned, Lonzo is not exactly looking like old Lonzo Ball anyway.
Yeah. So what I would say is that the most likely path, unless there's a doctor out there that we don't know about or that pops up in the next few days to a week that says, hey, look, I have this new thing and it's not that high risk and the recovery time's not that long and I think it's going to fix it. By and large, the options are unproven or they're what we've seen this year, right? It's more like, Joel, you got to get out there. You have to harden the inside of that knee by playing on it and powering through it. I'm not asking him to play hurt if I'm a doctor, but I'm saying to him, the more that you push this back, the longer that you wait. Like we talked about the mental component and why you would sit out from that perspective, right? But from a physical standpoint, the medical consensus right now is, or if there is a consensus, is he needs to play as much as he can because eventually the knee will adjust. And if you hold him out, if he doesn't play the rest of the year and then doesn't play until next October, early November, whenever it is, you're rolling the clock back because you're getting him off it and you're not going through that process of essentially toughening up the inside of the knee, the cartilage, the bone area, so that you can avoid swelling, you can avoid pain. And so it's a terrible spot to be in. You're essentially saying to him, you got to thug it out right now. Like that's the only real option you have unless you're willing to undergo something that maybe it works, but more than likely you're going to end up a limited player.
And this is when we talked about, what was this, last week before the Boston game? I don't know what day we talked about. We all gave we all gave our opinion on, and I was the one that said, no, I'd sit him for the reason that things change. You don't play him because, not disagreeing with the guys, but it was just more of, hey man, this dude needs to sit down. And part of that, Kyle, is you just say that, the playing part of it, yeah, you're right. You have to get used to it. But there's no need right now just because of where things are, because of where the season is. And Derek, you talked about the Sixers' whole side of things, where he needs to be with the Sixers, placing blame on himself. He's going to go out there and he's going to get frustrated. He's going to do that now. He's going to do that in the offseason until he gets back out there on the floor and see where he is. You can do that stuff, in my opinion, in the offseason when you start to get to your individual workouts. You simulate certain things with running up and down the floor. Maybe not a 40-minute game, and of course running and bumping into all these other dudes that are on the floor, but they're going to do their best to simulate what it looks like of being able to play and try that stuff out in that setting. While it's not an NBA overall setting in an actual game, it's trying to get used to it. It's the same thing as the rehab of trying to get used to it that way, and then going out there and simulating it that way against whatever trainers and whatever players are out there with you helping out, whether it's from the Sixers side of things or him and Drew Hanlon getting together and trying those. That's where I was. And look, I still sit there and say he doesn't need to play, not just because of the tanking part. We said they're going to lose games on their own. They don't need the sick guys just to lose. They're bad. They're going to lose games. But for that reason, and I still remain there, that he should sit out for the remainder of the season for that part, because that stuff can be simulated, in my opinion, of going out there in the offseason and training with those guys and trying to work that out. There's nothing like, I understand, there's nothing like an actual basketball game going against the actual opponent.
Pretty sure even Joel in this state could block Drew Hanlon at the rim.
Yeah, but not just Drew Hanlon. Yeah, there has to be other people out there on the floor to do that stuff.
No, I know. I'm just making a joke.
Yeah. So.
It's been a very depressing show. I need to make a joke every now and then.
So that's where we are. But look, I mean, that's just me, and we all have our opinion. In the end, we all want to see the draft pick at this point. But how they get there, that's a whole nother story. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back. We'll dive into a lot more of this because it's just been a frustrating overall thing with this basketball team. We'll keep it going right here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast. We got to make Derek laugh a little bit on this Thursday. The team is bad.
What's that meme that's like, you should smile more? I don't have anything to smile about. That's Derek right now.
We'll keep it going. Plus the super chats.
Need that draft pick, man.
Yeah, badly. Plus the super chats and an update on Eric Gordon as well right here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast presented by Bet365. Oh, are your funds right? Are you still feeling the pain from the funds from the holiday and all? Well, it's almost time that we've been telling you about this for a while. You have one more day to apply by February 28th to take advantage of trying to clear up some of that stuff from the holidays of all the money that you did spend. It's still hitting you, right? A little bit? Well, here's what you do. Think about this. What if you could pay it off faster, courtesy of TrueMark Financial, and with zero interest until 2026? It's true, because TrueMark Financial is offering zero interest on balance transfers for 12 months. So all your payments can go toward reducing your balance, not just covering interest. So we're off tomorrow. So I want to say this one more time. You have one more day to apply by tomorrow. Here's the play. Transfer your existing balance from another institution to a TrueMark Financial Visa credit card and take advantage of this amazing opportunity by tomorrow. Whether you're interested in earning rewards, cash back, or simply preferring a lower rate for everyday purchases with TrueMark Financial, you can choose the credit card that best fits your financial needs. You want to take care of that. You want to get the planning for your summer vacations of how you want to do those things. And TrueMark Financial is offering that with this new Visa credit card, taking advantage of this offer. Visit TrueMark.com/compare for full details and to apply today. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, Equal Opportunity Lender. Terms and conditions do apply. All loans subject to approval. 3% balance transfer fee applies. Standard rates apply after the promotional rate.
And if you save all that money with TrueMark, you can spend it on your house and fix it up with Ace Hardware Home Services at Ace Hardware Home Services. Whenever they get ready for the next job, they remember what to bring because they bring experience. They're local plumbers, techs. They can handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installations and upgrades. They bring understanding. They listen to your goals. The job is not completed until you are satisfied with the job. And they bring helpful to your home so you can spend more of your time on the projects that really matter, on your friends, on your family. Maybe you're reading some nice books right now. Whatever it is, Ace Hardware Home Services makes sure you have that time and you're going to save you some money in the process. Free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and your budget. Aceware Hardware Home Services are local too. Their teams live and serve in your community and are dedicated to keeping their neighbors comfortable in their house. So visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Podcast presented by Bet365. Quick update on medical update on Eric Gordon. He's been out. Reported, of course, that the wrist was an issue for him. Shooting the ball pretty well for a while there. And, of course, all the interest that Mark Stein had discussed, you guys had discussed about around the league before the trade deadline.
Here? He wasn't getting traded. Maybe for like a late second, a top 55 protected second round pick.
Protected.
Well, no, you have to have 5 picks. It has to have a 5-pick window. Anyway, he wasn't getting really traded.
Yeah.
There was interest. Anyway.
Sure.
All right. Eric Gordon.
Give me for free. I'll take
Eric Gordon underwent successful arthroscopic surgery on his right wrist yesterday. Will be reevaluated in approximately 3 months. And updates on his status will be provided as appropriate. That is from the Sixers. So he's out for the remainder of the season.
I wish him the best. His highlight video will go next to Frank Gore's Eagles highlight tape in Philadelphia sports lore. At least he played.
He actually played. Yeah.
He had some
moments.
He
clears Andrew Bynum. So
he honestly, he may go down as a true villain if they don't keep their pick because he sucked whenever it mattered and was good when people were like, oh, the season's over. Let's give up. So,
yeah.
It's not really his fault, but it's also like really unfortunately timed good stretch of basketball.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're at the point where we're trying to lose, and he will have games where he can shoot you into games. So maybe it's good for that reason. But, yeah, look, he was hurt for a good chunk of the year. Finally got that dental surgery, turned into the real Eric Gordon for a couple of weeks and won him a couple games.
That must have been a hell of a toothache, man.
Yeah.
Because he came out of that surgery just like firing on all cylinders.
It will be interesting what happens because he has that player option for next year. And I've laid out why he can get the same amount of money and reduce the cap hit by opting out and signing a 1-year deal. He might not want to opt out and take the risk that Daryl just goes, I changed my mind. I don't want to re-sign you. Like, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It would be great, especially if you're trying to use that non-taxpayer mid-level. It would be great to get that off your books or at least decreased by 1.4 mil, but we'll see.
More minutes for the younger guards. There you go. Justin
Edwards. I mean, I would want the younger guards. Even irrespective of tanking or losing games, I would want the younger guards playing. Like, please, maybe even try, I don't know, Jared Butler. Give him a minute or two. But
he's out of the rotation, man.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand that one. But yeah, I put Eric Gordon in a different category than Lowry.
Lowry just
really
shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Gordon, I at least understood the reasoning behind.
By the way, they really with Lowry all year have just been like he disappears for weeks at a time, and it's like, yeah, we'll update you on him eventually, and then he's just back. Whereas like Eric Gordon, at least we've gotten maybe Eric Gordon is pro media, and it's like, you know what? I need to be clear with my messaging. If I got my wisdom teeth out, I'm going to let them know. If I'm getting wrist stuff, you can let them know. Kyle Lowry's like, I don't know, my hips messed up. It's just weird. The discrepancy from player to player is very interesting to me.
Yeah. Just to talk a little bit more about with the Embiid part, and I brought up Jake a little bit earlier, Jake Fisher, and some of the stuff that he had written.
Friend of the show.
Some of the things
cited PHLY in his story, by the way.
He cited you, but then he linked to my video and didn't actually cite. Like he hosted on Streamable. Just link to my tweet, Jake. Just link to my tweet.
PHLY Sixers.
Well, especially
I'm not going to.
Jake and I were teammates.
I'm not going to complain.
Of course you're not. He mentioned you. I'm just saying. That's all.
I didn't even say he mentioned me. I just said he mentioned PHLY.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take any credit.
Mention the group. One thing, he's talked about some Knicks stuff from last summer and all that. We'll get to that. But he also discussed, Kyle, where we've been discussing this for a while of how they should approach the rest of the season, where they are currently not pulling the cord on the season, man. They're still looking at this one as they're 2.5 games back. We mentioned it last night.
Is it a bungee cord? Or are they hanging off of a bridge in a South American country?
I don't know.
Went up to some guy who they don't speak the same language as and said, sure, I'll get on that bungee.
Whatever cord it is, they're not pulling it. They're not pulling it, as Bree pulls up the tweet here there from the NBA Central, not Central.
Well, Central's back now.
They're
See
back.
that? They're back.
They're back. Okay, cool.
I'm
they got a lot of
save
love.
my thoughts on that whole thing.
I mean, they're all just copying Ballsack Sports anyway, but move on. And for our partners, that was not me cursing, or that's an actual account, to be clear.
Oh my God.
Well, they're not pulling the cord on the season, Kyle. They're still giving it a full go, man. After podcast, P said he's retiring for the remainder of the season. Goes out and drops 24, 25, whatever he had last night. There's still hope. There's still hope of making the postseason run for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, so there are a lot of interesting angles here. One, you can't come out and say we're shutting it down
Of
or
course
we're going to
not.
tank, right? Because we learned the hard way in Philadelphia that the league doesn't like it when the Philadelphia team decides they're going to openly tank. They have a little bit different circumstances, obviously, this time. But you don't want to call too much attention to yourself after the last brouhaha that came out of that. Then there's the butt covering aspect of all this, right? Where like, I'm really interested in who ends up, and it might be multiple people, who ends up being the ultimate fall guy for all this. Because I do think the deeper we get here, where the messaging is this consistent, like we haven't given up and, oh, Joel might be able to come back and play. And there's been no branch off from that, right? There's been nobody who's come out and been like, oh yeah, the Sixers are brazenly tanking and they're shutting everybody down. And, you know, maybe when Joel has a ruling here sometime in the next few days to a week, we'll have some clarity on all of it. But it really does feel like everybody's feeling a little, and maybe not a little, a lot of bit nervous about how ownership is going to react to what has been, I think, pretty easily the most disappointing Sixer season in multiple decades, probably. Is
easily,
that like,
yeah. That's not hyperbole at all.
I'm not even sure what else, like the Horford season is in the conversation, but that I don't think that's even close to this one. Because at least that team, we said it on a recent show, elite home record. And part of the problem is they weren't healthy in the playoffs, right? Like Ben Simmons hurts his back and can't play and all that. They were at least a functional, semi-functional basketball team. They looked like the damn Globetrotters compared to this team.
Here's a sure sign they're not tanking. 43 minutes and 30 seconds.
That is true.
Averaging Tyrese Maxey averaging 38 minutes per game over this 9-game losing streak. And that includes
with
one
his
game.
hand taped up.
Well, his hand taped up in one game against the Bulls where he only played like 28 because it was how many were that down by?
Yeah.
50.
So yeah.
50.
Yeah. They have not called it yet. Their actions say so.
Yeah, no, they haven't. But when you see a play like Andre Drummond out there last night kicking the ball into the stands, hanging on the rim, giving up a point that they cannot afford to give up, that's one. Andre Drummond with his 6-foot push shot, air ball leading to a 3 the other way.
I won't defend the air ball. Like I said last night, I will defend the unfortunate timing of the boot into the crowd.
The boot, but not the hanging on the rim. And then when Ricky is out there Euro stepping in on a 301 transition and travels because he leaves his feet.
But that's not Ricky tanking. That's Ricky being Ricky.
But he's playing.
Yeah. He's not playing much though. They only have like 9 guys available. It's hard to put together a coherent team that's not going to put at least a little bit of bozo energy on the floor, right? Like it's unavoidable for this group.
And that's why we say They don't necessarily need to sit anyone because they are that bad. They are just bad. On merit, they are bad. And they're going to lose these basketball games. And you get ready for the Golden State Warriors on Saturday night, home against Portland on Monday, followed by a trip to Minnesota the next day on Tuesday. One of 5 back-to-backs in the month of March for the 76ers, by the way. So
love it, man. Just what I
there you
needed.
have it.
You know, we got through that long January of so many back-to-backs where I felt like I was dying inside because they had, 17 games in the month.
Never 18 and 30.
Wow.
Never 18 and 30.
The league cleared that up. So thank God for that. But yeah, just to go right back to the back-to-backs to end the year. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that there are, in fact, 5. 1,
I'm
4, 5.
pretty
Yes.
positive you're correct.
It's
on
5.
that one.
Yeah, 5 of them in total. So, I mean, but no, again, they're just not good. So, and when you look at that, just kind of transition to that real quick, because we are off tomorrow and we'll do our pregame at 8:00. You guys will be at the arena. Just looking at Golden State Saturday, they've been playing some really good basketball since Jimmy
They
Butler's
look like
gotten
an
there.
actual threat to do something in the playoffs right now.
Right. Then you have Portland and Minnesota as that back-to-back, followed by the Boston Celtics away on Thursday. Not great for these next 4 for the Sixers. So when we talk about them not pulling the plug and full steam ahead, hey, while you want to get some help from some of these other teams as we have our tank watch with these games and all, this is what they're fielding now. Even with them playing 40-plus minutes, they're having to go out there and play these 40-plus minutes with 2 bad pinkies and your 2 best players, and hoping that you get some help from Kelly Oubre and others to win some of these games. It's going to be tough, starting with the Golden State Warriors on Saturday in that schedule.
Drugs help.
Drugs help.
That's what I've heard from Paul George anyway.
Drugs help. Yeah.
I have one last thing on Joel before we get out of here. I know we have some super chats. I do think, like, we talked about the mental side of the game and how we see him processing things. It is incumbent upon him, because we can all be honest, even if he gets a surgery, he's not going to reclaim like younger Joel Embiid athleticism, right? He might be more athletic, like as Derek said, maybe he's, I don't know, 25% more mobile than he is right now. Maybe it's 50%, whatever the number is. He's not going to be young Joel Embiid running all over the floor, blocking things like crazy. That is come and gone. And he has to accept that, like, you're older, you are a different player, you are a different person. And that doesn't mean that you can't be an impactful and effective basketball player. But you have to be of the mindset that, like, okay, maybe I'm not the guy who scores 30 points, but maybe I'm going to get 8 or 9 assists, and I'm going to use my height as a weapon, as a passer, and I can figure out ways to do that. Maybe I'm not the shot blocker I could be at my peak, but my positioning can be better. My communication, yelling to people, can be better. If I'm not going to run up and down the floor at full speed and I still have my lungs, I need to be the loudest and most vocal connector of people on the floor as the defensive anchor of the team. Like, you losing some of your physical burst and that impacting you, like, I get all that. But at the end of the day, you still have a job to do. So, like, you're one of the most important players on this team, if the most important until, you know, he's out of here, basically. You have to act like it. You have to carry yourself like it. And that's going to take a different form, a different shape every single night. He has to come to terms with that. And I think that's the thing that he is struggling with the most right now. I think all the stuff that has come out about experimental procedures and, like, he's looking for someone to give him an option. It just seems like a guy who wants someone to tell him something different rather than telling him the truth. And Joel, the truth is, you're not going to be as fast as you used to be. You're probably not going to be as dominant and as great as you used to be. That doesn't mean you can't be a high level player. The skill level is high. You have a great partner in Tyrese Maxey, who you've shown is a great, great partner to you on offense and who you can help make up for some of his deficiencies. Paul George will be better, more presumably, than he was for stretches of this year. I see Derek shaking his head. We don't actually know that.
I think you're right, but we don't know for sure.
I don't know, but I think Paul George will be better. And you have some young guys on the roster now. Jared McCain, it looks like a real good one when he's back next year. You need to figure out a way to be a high-level player. It is possible. Don't mope. Don't sulk. Like, you can feel bad. You can feel disappointed that this is where your career is headed and where it's at. But what you do next is still in your control. You can't control the knee. You can't control some of the other stuff. You control your habits, your actions on the floor, and how you lead. And that's got to be the headline for him moving forward.
It's up to him. It's all up to him. All right, let's get to the super chats here that we have. DJ, a.k.a. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream that Joel Embiid figures this whole thing out at some point. Joel is not a rim defender anymore. If you keep him, you have to surround him with length like the Nuggets do with Porter and Gordon.
I would love Aaron Gordon or an Aaron Gordon type on this roster. We talked about
somebody
that.
else brought up Giannis with Brook Lopez. Like, great. Yeah, if you can get Giannis, sign me up.
Hey, listen, if you could trade Paul George for Giannis, sign on the dotted line, baby.
But no, like that kind of an archetype where you get a bigger, sort of like 3-4 who can provide some weak side shot blocking. Certainly sign me up. Paul gives you a little bit of that. Like, he can give you a little bit of weak side, but another one to go along there would be good. Yeah.
I agree. Puppas, this is cheaper than counseling.
Puppas.
Who's going to give us the counseling?
Why don't you have a seat over there and we'll talk about what we're all going through right now.
Going through a lot, man. Going through a lot. Cheddar with a super chat. Thanks, Puppas. Cheddar with a super chat. I have no Kyle Lowry slander. Just treat our next coach with respect.
I actually was thinking the other day.
I don't generally support players going right from coaching to head coach. Like, I want you to have a stop or two along the way. But I could see Kyle being a coach.
I was thinking the other day, because the Lakers have been much better this year for multiple reasons, but replacing Darvin Ham with JJ, I wonder who the next guy will be that goes straight from like
player,
no coaching experience to head coach.
Yeah.
Because there have been a few now, right? Nash, JJ. Did Chauncey have any?
No,
he didn't have any, right?
Because they were trying to get him for the front office, and he turned that down. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of like who is a candidate to do that sort of thing. It's probably not obvious, right? Because they tend to come out of nowhere. But
what's interesting is a lot of them recently, usually you'd think of like coaches being like guys who were role players or didn't make a ton of money, because usually when you've made a lot of money, you don't want to put up with this BS.
SB said Rondo, and Rondo I think has the brain to do it, but Rondo also famously standoffish and as Devon said, the temperament, I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Although JJ's a reputation for like,
he can get a little.
He's pretty prickly and has been prickly with media. Like, I like JJ, but that's kind of his thing. So
it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Some people say Chris Paul. It's not a bad one with Chris Paul. All right, that'll do it for us, folks.
Chris Paul also a famous maniac. By the way. Like,
nut.
I love Chris Paul.
Yeah,
very on brand for me. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, he's also a nut. All right, let's get to the world famous roll call.
Hello and thank you to Joaquin, to Igavini, to Marcus Blackstock.
What up, Mark?
To Hedfa, a.k.a. Cheddar.
Cheddar.
To INS, to Mellow 3 Point, to Jesse Bond.
What up, Jess?
To SB Cole, to Mary Overfield, to my girl Winona. Brian Knight, Fresh Prince 215, Ed Wright, to Mom's grandchildren. What up, Mom?
Hey, Mom.
Bucket Getter 215, Money Mar, Yams Colangelo.
Yams.
I should remember the super chatters, but I already forgot them.
Hedva, Puppas, and Mr. Sandman.
Bring me a dream, right? Basketball Joy, also in the building.
We missed that.
We're missing a lot of joy. Yamir, I know we're having some disagreements in the chat, but appreciate you coming through, buddy. And Kyle Wright was here as well as Ed Wright. Who else we got? That's probably Hinky.
What up, Hinky?
Also here today. Keith B in the building. Thank you, everybody who was here. Our guy Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Also here. Thank you guys, each and every one of you, for hanging out and coming through. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the bell icon to get notifications, and hit the thumbs up to say thank you, Bree. We're off on Friday, back on Saturday. We'll see you then.
We all silly like the mayor.